Our story begins a little bit before episode 2, Attack of the Clones. While in the normal continuity, the relationship between Padme Amidala and the now Jedi Padawan Anakin Skywalker was blooming, this alternative story explores a more derivative path where Anakin embraced inceldom instead of going after one of the baddest bitches in the galaxy. Although Senator Amidala spent considerable time around the young Skywalker, growing up into his teens, Anakin had started to resent her presence. On his alone time, free of Jedi training in the temple and in the fields, Anakin frequently browsed the HoloNet. He became as attuned to the intricate weaves of the web as his connection to the Force. Anakin knew where to look, to search, and to connect. While only a few had explored the galaxy as much as Anakin had as a Padawan, even fewer had explored into the deepest corners of the HoloNet as he had. Anakin browsed many forums and chat boards actively and had, in time, grown a known identity, be it behind an alias. Young Skywalker had fondness for one particular forum, glubshitos.us, which themes revolved around sexual frustration, not fitting into the society, patriarchy, misanthropy, and woman-hating. He felt like he belonged there. Anakin had been told for as long as he could remember that attachment is the path towards the dark. He knew that better than anyone for sure. Skywalker had adopted an unorthodox approach to this, which frankly troubled the Jedi Masters training him. Anakin refused to be around women. Obi-Wan Kenobi, his master, noticed this trend quite early into Anakin's training. His aversion to the female being was not subtle. When Kenobi intrigued him about this, Anakin simply claimed to be averting his attention from potential attachments. In his teenagerhood, especially so. Kenobi attempted to soften Anakin's shell by having the pair's long-known acquaintance, Senator Padme Amidala, frequently visit, but to no avail. Anakin had none of it. This meant that whenever Kenobi was not present in Anakin's training, and in his stead would be a woman, Anakin was trained by the droids. Wookiees were no problem for Skywalker, strangely enough. He probably didn't realize the difference. But who would? This realization by the Jedis led Anakin to have uncommon amounts of furry lessons when not trained by Obi-Wan. When Anakin grew more and learned more, he became increasingly more distant with quote, "voids," unquote, Wookiees or not. He would lower his head whenever in a woman's presence, not in respect, but as to not to bear to look at one. After Anakin's first encounter with Count Dooku on Geonosis, and after losing his gooning hand, the situation worsened rapidly. Anakin had to practice nofap. This led to increased emotional fluctuation, which Obi-Wan and the rest of the Jedi quickly caught on. Anakin's behavior has to be corrected, Kenobi cried to the council. He can't live like this forever, you know. The boy's gotta go or correct his ways. Your concern, we hear, explained Grandmaster Yoda. Test young Skywalker, we shall. The council nodded in unison to Yoda's proposal. What kind of test? Kenobi asked, curiously. The following day Anakin was assigned a Padawan, Ashoka Tano. Anakin Skywalker, to be said lightly, was mortified. A girl, a luscious teenage girl, as his Padawan? Not happening. Master, wh- what is the meaning of this? Anakin asked in a very concerned voice. Your new Padawan, assigned by the Jedi Council itself, Obi-Wan smiled. New perspective on relationship was in order. Master, this is outrageous. This is unfair. Now, Anakin. This is not a punishment of any kind. You want to be a master one day, don't you? This is what being a master is all about. Compassion, acceptance, being there for your lesser. The reaction to the new Padawan was like yin-yang between the two. While Anakin detested the idea to its core, Obi-Wan was delighted. Not only because he believed Anakin would soften up his approach to foids through a Padawan, but also because Obi-Wan had eyes on Ahsoka, that barely legal jailbait in a civilized age. He was sure that they would spend a lot of time, the three of them, together. Especially rewarding would be to see Ashoka move in those skimpy clothes. I demand her to use long robes around me, if I am to train this void, Anakin exclaimed, breaking Obi-Wan's thought process. What? Anakin, you can't seriously. I insist, and it is my Padawan, not yours. The Master knows best. Kenobi stood still, shocked. Anakin was seriously not suggesting covering up such an orange gem? Anakin. Master, it is final. She will be in robes. And so she would. Anakin took Ashoka Tano as his Padawan. Ashoka would not be wearing the outfit we have grown accustomed to in the Clone Wars, but instead she would exclusively wore long Jedi robes whenever she was around Anakin, and by extension, Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan, while his usual sassy self, was annoyed by this. Jedi code discourages such lustful thoughts, but a man's a man, and Kenobi was no gooner nor edger. He didn't like using his hands on himself. He liked getting his hands dirty on something else. He made it abundantly clear whenever they would encounter Sith assassin Asai Ventress. He would be more raunchy in his approach, which for Anakin was disgusting. Ventress didn't much mind this flirt. Kenobi was always popular with the Foids, and always tried to make an impression. The day Kenobi was assigned to guard the Duchess of Mandalore, Satine Cruz, Kenobi was thrilled. The relationship between the two was close, but had been broken due to external factors, those being the Jedi Code with Kenobi and politics with Satine. But now they would be reunited after so long. Kenobi wasted no time preparing and leaving for Mandalore, as happened in the show. However, since Obi-Wan had been denied of guilty pleasures by Anakin's insistence of covering his hot Ruta Tog Ruta Padawan, his sexual drive was running at boiling temperatures. Obi-Wan did not hide his intentions behind light flirting, but instead he was direct with Satine about his feelings and desires. Satine, as in the canon, was in love with Kenobi, so the ice breaking was a success. Obi-Wan and Satine were as close as ever. Only a Gog droid knows what happened in private between the two. All was in secret, as a relationship between the ruler of Mandalore and a Jedi would be quite controversial. When eventually Maul, accompanied by the Shadow Collective, seized the throne of Mandalore and captures Satine as a hostage, the scene plays out in a much more dramatic fashion. Maul had the intention to crush and defeat Obi-Wan in spirit as well as in physical. Murdering Satine in front of Kenobi would struck him deeper and much more profoundly.
What have you done? Satine, Satine, Satine.
While Kenobi was shaking in shock, trying to keep Satine with him, Maul taunted Kenobi.
Oh, poor Obi-Wan. I thought the code forbade attachments. It seems I was mistaken.
A deep anger was building in Kenobi. He knew and tried to suppress the boiling hatred he felt in the back of his head. But as with a boiling pot, a lid only makes it spill over. Kenobi, distraught by the loss of his beloved in the hands of his lifelong rival, made him go over the edge. Maul noticed this.
I had no idea you were capable of such hatred, Obi-Wan. Good. Feel everything. Feel the anger. Feel the fear.
But Maul miscalculated. While he knew Kenobi was a fearsome duelist outright, empowered by his before suppressed emotions, he would be nearly unstoppable. And Maul would learn this quick. Kenobi ignited his blue lightsaber and swung at Maul with incredible force. Maul just managed to block the ferocious strike, only to be followed by many more. Maul's entourage tried to open fire to freeze Maul from Kenobi's rampage, only to be followed by Kenobi force pushing them off the building's windows. Maul was alone. He had never anticipated such ferocity from Kenobi, and it would be too late to reverse this. Kenobi struck the lightsaber off Maul's hands and force choked him, followed by a force push to the wall.
Please, mercy.
Maul pleaded. His plead would only get halfway before Kenobi struck him in his head. The killer of Qui-Gon and the bane of Obi-Wan Kenobi, formerly Darth, now dead Maul, was gone. Kenobi was left panting after dealing the killing blow. He took a glance at the corpse, then at Satine's. He collected himself and notified his squad of the situation, but not in full truth. The following missions where Anakin and his master went had now a changed atmosphere. While before Obi-Wan would be his joking self, he would appear more cynical. Anakin would be his usual self, joking, arrogant, and woman-hating as always. Kenobi never addressed truly what happened on Mandalore, but Anakin understood that it had shaken his master enough to make him a more confined person. At least he wasn't eyeing his Padawan again. What even made Kenobi care for a bratty foid remained mystery to him that would never be solved. The conspiracy that embroiled Ashoka brought more encounters with their old adversary, Ventress. Her involvement in the whole ordeal was unaccounted for, as she had basically disappeared from the galaxy for a considerable amount of time. Anakin, as with all women, was increasingly aggressive with her and didn't hesitate to almost decapitate her in multiple occasions. Ventress and Kenobi, however, remained increasingly flirty. As the conspiracy was unraveled and Ashoka left the Order, Kenobi was seen in the temple less and less. As the Clone Wars neared their end, just as in the movies, Anakin received visions of a woman dying in his nightmares, crying out his name, crying in general, and being in pain. It was not clear who she was. She appeared familiar, yet so foreign. The nightmares troubled Anakin deeply, not because he cared for the woman, but because he was dreaming of Voids, him. As this was going on, Anakin was assigned to spy on the Chancellor. They spent a great amount of time together, discussing and growing a bond. Palpatine would reveal dark side, quote, myths and legends, unquote, to Skywalker.
Is it possible to learn this power?
Anakin asked.
Perhaps the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider unnatural.
Anakin was left wondering, what could he possibly mean by this? What secrets were the Jedi keeping from him? On the fateful evening when Anakin and Palpatine were, as usual, discussing matters, Anakin brought up the nightmares he had been having.
I've seen it. A woman, a void, dying while screaming, while just dying and crying out my name.
He explained. Anakin went into great detail on his everlasting nightmares. The Chancellor could only smile.
He had been waiting for this. Deeply troubling, Anakin. Could I suggest an unorthodox approach to this?
Anakin's ears perked up.
Some say the hidden abilities of the dark side of the Force have allowed some who practice them to create life.
Palpatine coughed.
And by that extension, to save people from certain death.
Anakin stood silent and listened to the old man.
Anakin, follow me. Follow me to learn this power. Follow me to save Padme from certain death.
What did you say? Anakin asked in a confused tone.
Don't let the Jedi control you. Only through me shall she live.
Anakin ignited his lightsaber.
You are the Sith Lord the Jedi have been searching for.
Anakin exclaimed as he raised his blue blade.
towards the Chancellor. Don't be the pawn of the Jedi. Listen to me, Anakin.
Palpatine insisted, but Anakin stood there silently with his blade high.
Are you going to kill me?
The Chancellor asked.
I would certainly like to. I know you would. I can feel your anger. It gives you focus.
Anakin retracted the lightsaber blade and came closer to the Sith Lord.
Who is Padme to you?
Anakin asked angrily.
Is she not your lover? I see her visiting your chambers often.
Palpatine replied with a slight Sith stare accompanied by a sardonic smile that made Anakin uneasy. Anakin ignited the lightsaber right on the Sith Lord's chest, penetrating it. Palpatine fell on the floor, dead.